Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Susan Lindner, your host of the Innovation Storytellers Show, where we discuss all manner of stories that get big ideas and incredible cultures to the innovation mindset and hopefully products and services to their intended finish lines. I'm really excited today to have my guest from Sage, and we're going to talk a little bit more about on the call today. Bronwyn Dorrofield is the director of the Innovation Academy at Sage, where she drives a culture of experimentation and innovation. She is passionate about cross-functional collaboration and engages daily with a number of diverse colleagues across different countries, cultures, and functions who share a similar passion for innovation and empowering others. Her journey from product marketing to innovation was sparked by a passion for problem solving and customer centricity, and has since evolved into a key pillar of Sage's company learning initiatives. And I am looking forward so much to this conversation today because I think what Sage has done is create a process and a blueprint that lots of other companies could follow. It's done smartly and succinctly, and it really engages people from the ground up. So, Bronwyn, thank you so much for joining us all the way from South Africa today.
Thanks so much for having me, Susan. I appreciate it and really excited to have a chat.
Yes, it's like one of my favorite accents in the world, right behind Brazilian and Scottish. So you're right up there.
Awesome.
So, Brahma, before we dive in, tell some of our listeners what Sage is for those of our listeners who don't know Sage.
Cool. So Sage is an accounting and payroll software solution. We're passionate about how we can support small businesses and their accounting and payroll needs. So been with the business for over 20 years and watched it grow over the years, which has been really rewarding, and excited to chat to you about some of our offerings.
Yeah, so let's dive in. You were not always an innovation guru, right? You started off in product marketing. Tell us a little bit about that and how you made the transition into innovation.
Yeah. So I think we often all have those squiggly careers, then one opportunity and one door opens the next door. And I think part of it's also about having a curious mindset. But being in product marketing, I was always passionate about the customer and what were we solving for the right problems that the customer was facing and what were the biggest pain points that they had. So I started doing quite a few early adopter programs on the different products that I was supporting. And then we at Sage, we had this thing called a big conversation, which happened just a few months before COVID, where we discussed different topics in the business. Where were colleagues at? What were they feeling? What were the opportunities where there could be improvement within the business? And I volunteered towards the innovation stream in facilitating some of the conversations. And it really just blew up as far as we had so many engaging conversations and so many passionate colleagues just sharing their stories and how they wanted to share with others, that we really saw this sort of opportunity that we couldn't just stop there. So we created a community. We're all volunteers. So it was colleague led as opposed to business led to start with. And really just started discussion, started looking at what colleagues wanted to hear about, what we wanted to talk about. And the surprising thing is a lot of it was around the mindset and the tools. So that's kind of the pathway that we continued on. So started off on a volunteer basis. We did some design thinking workshops. We looked at different tools and techniques. We ran a session with Strategizer, looking at different problems in the business and having been coached by Strategizer and looking at what they could do to support us and teach us as we were going along. And we did a similar project. So looking at the two different perspectives. And then
I love those guys. The guys at
yeah, they're both great.
Yeah, we've had Tendai on the show twice because like his insights were so fantastic. Our listeners were like, more Strategizer, please. So shout out to my friends at Strategizer. They're great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they share the same compassion, the same passion as us for the empathy of the customer. And today we're still big advocates for a lot of their tools and techniques that they use.
Fantastic. Yeah. So you're building this all together and you're kind of creating the learnings, right? So who's involved in that initial learning? Did you formulate a SWAT team to begin to create this innovation mindset, or how did you pull together the folks who would be in the room for these sessions?
Yeah, so it started. There was one colleague of mine, Fred Frederico, that was working full time in this project and looking at what it could be, as I was a volunteer co leading it with him. And we just really started looking at, well, who else in the business were passionate about it and starting to bring on more champions. And there were so many colleagues that were eager to get involved and be part of the difference and empowering colleagues to be able to innovate in their day to day through these different conversations that we're having through. We used the base of design thinking and looking at how you bring the customer to the beginning and making sure that you're solving for the right problems. So it was really, we were experimenting as we were going along and being curious as to what people were looking for and how we could support them. And as we started these design thinking workshops, we all flew into Newcastle to run this first session. And then 7 days later, just after I got home, we were all in lockdown. I had to quickly pivot that strategy to look at how we're going to proliferate these skills outside, no longer being face to face, but online. And there was the other dynamic in how could people were still not familiar with being online all the time, and how could we support them in embracing online, feeling psychologically safe to put their camera on, to have these conversations. There were all people were working in different spaces from their kitchen to their bedroom. How could you make them look more professional and give them some of the tips and support that they needed during those stages? And I think it was also great because everyone was in the same boat, so there was more of that empathy created through those times, and people were eager to try new things and try new ways of working as they were dealing with those stages that they were going through.
Yeah. And so you have this kind of diverse mix of folk, right, who are beginning the journey with you. And then tell us a little bit about this evolution and how you got to the Innovation Academy.
Yeah. So it started off with the design thinking workshop that was created by Fred and another colleague, Madeleine Tanyet. And we looked at what this was for us at Sage, and we actually created a course called 10x Innovation Growth, and that was our first learning offering that we had, and that went really well. We had everyone up until our CEO come and attend the learning with us, and it
Wow.
was about really getting the customer to the center of what the problems were within the business and proliferating those skills around design thinking. But it was also in the way in which we're presenting the training and creating that engagement and that human element for those conversations that people could, they weren't just learning the tools, but they were practicing as they were going through different scenarios of problems that existed within our business so that they could resonate with those problems. So that was really the starting point. We then started seeing different needs within the business, a need for supporting colleagues with facilitation. If you're going to innovate, you need to be able to give that perfect pitch. You need to know how to facilitate and know how to present yourself accordingly. So we started running these practice facilitation sessions where people could support each other and learn from each other, sharing tips. And this wasn't just full-time colleagues. These were volunteers from within the volunteer colleagues within the business, all doing this on top of their day jobs because of their passion for supporting others and empowering others. And it was very much a team effort. So my focus in that space was often in bringing together the colleagues that were volunteering and what were the things that they needed to support them in being able to give back to others, and how can we keep them together. So we had some fun things like doing unconferences where they could learn and be able to share their different thoughts and make sure that they were in the areas that they felt comfortable and that they were learning the most from. And
So
so this evolved.
can I just ask a question? So
Mm,
when you begin to involve all the employees in the process, right, as opposed to like people are really doing this thinking, how do you ensure that you're not collecting all of these great ideas and then some of them aren't going to be executed, right? It's not like everybody has a great idea and everything gets executed, funded, and put into the pipeline.
yeah. So I think that was always an important part. It came down to looking at the stats. So we'd experiment with different tools, techniques, and events on different topics, and we very quickly see those that people were interested in. We looked at we measured the return on time invested. So at the end of every session or initiative we ran, we'd ask colleagues, what was the investment of your time? Because we know one of the biggest barriers to colleagues innovating is that they're too busy in their day to day. So if this was a good investment in their time, there was something that we would be able to look, and then constantly gathering feedback and looking and assessing what do we need to stop, start, and continue doing. And even prior to that, as we were thinking of new ideas, we had to run through that design thinking methodology ourselves to see, okay, well, is there desirability in what we're doing? Are we solving for the right problems that are within the business? Because we all as humans can be so quick to jump to our biases and our assumptions. So what are the right problems that need to be solved for? We're very fortunate that we also very quickly had some of the exec support within these initiatives because of the adoption excitement around the program. So it's also validating with some of the executives in the business, are these the right needs that we need to be solving for? So getting sponsorship from them, getting support from them so that we could grow the program.
So you really began to create the criteria, right? So that we're not,
100%.
because it can be a huge morale killer if you engage all these people and then nobody's ideas wind up making it to the finish line, right? Or even for consideration. People can feel really dejected and actually turn on the innovation process, or like,
Mm,
I put in all this effort and nobody wants to hear me, listen to me, et cetera, right? So that's
yes.
important.
Yes. And I think that's where the importance is having those transparent conversations
Yep.
and meeting people where they're at. So I think in being able to constantly, we ensured that we're meeting on a regular basis to be able to give that feedback and be transparent in the feedback around what was working, what wasn't working. Where do we need to start pivoting and including people in ideating on what some of those pivots needed to be.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the story that was circulating in the organization around innovation at the time. Was it something that everybody was craving and like, God, we should have had this for years? Or is it something that built up over time? Tell us, and like, what was the story that you told to get people on board? Like, how did you attract people to this new way of thinking and doing?
Yeah, so I think it was a problem that over time was developed, but I think this big conversation that we had within the business was really that moment where we saw how many different people from different countries, from different functions within the organization were feeling this. And so the opportunity was formed from that. And then it was a matter of getting these volunteers that we called our champions of continuous innovation to share their stories and invite people to join. So it was really, instead of just being one or two of us, it was a collaborative effort and everyone going and having conversations with different people in the business and inviting them to come and join us. So we started off in having some events called learning spaces where we would spotlight where there was innovation in the business and what were some of the learnings from those and what were some of the failures as well, and leaning in to be comfortable with where there was failures. That it's about taking the learnings from those in order to progress and take yourself further. So that was really where we started to proliferate by word of mouth. And I think also around that passion of it starting off being colleague led was a great dynamic for us because more and more colleagues wanted to get involved. And I think it was also because of the timings around COVID was people were also at home more, they're having more of those conversations and wanting to share and learn. That's one thing we're constantly surprised and love about the business is this passion within people to empower others and give back and learn from others within their space. So it's giving people the opportunity in order to do so.
Mm. And tell us a little bit about some of the results you've seen from the academy.
So the academy was so we actually started off as a community and then we evolved into the different spaces of where we had some of our colleagues within the community as it grew into a full-time team being consultants for different projects within the business and supporting those. And those consultants have now evolved into being part of our product marketing team to support where the inception of some of those opportunities take place, which is really exciting. And then the academy was formed after having a community and looking at how we could structure this learning more on the learning side of things. So what were the tools, what were the teachings that we could provide colleagues with around the innovation mindset? And that's where the academy was formed from. And then we've now brought it into the broader learning and development team within the business. So I think for us, there's some of the key metrics that we've had is in how many colleagues are attending both our we have e-learnings, we have workshops that we run, and then we have various ad hoc events and dojos within the business. Dojos being sessions where you learn a quick piece around a certain topic, but majority of the session is focused on actually practicing those learnings and collaborating with colleagues within the business. So
Mm.
our key metrics have been around what the return on time invested is that I mentioned, and what the satisfaction of colleagues were, and gathering feedback from colleagues on where they at. So we can then start looking at what the further future needs are for those colleagues. Another measure that we had was our engagement within our community. So within Sage, we have various different academies looking at either different functions and some of the skills needed for specific functions, and some of the more generic skills that are needed within the business. Um, so, with innovation being a skill that's needed, it's quite a broad piece because there are some specific techniques that you can cover with and methodologies with innovation. But a key thing is also around that innovative mindset to be able to ensure that colleagues are being empathetic to the customer's needs, that they're solving for the right problems, that it's sometimes little things like are they being adaptable? Are they embracing failures? Which are some of the key things that you need to lean into, and leaning into the uncomfortable around innovation in order to create those innovative opportunities, in order to be curious and think outside the box. I remember once doing a session with a marketing team where they were thinking of a new campaign that could attract attention. And they kept on, as we were thinking, ideating, thinking of different ideas, it was kept on thinking of ideas that were safe and within the safe space of being in the box. So I actually drew on Miro a box, and every time they gave it an idea, I'd start putting it into the box, and still they could start visually seeing what was inside the box and what ideas we're starting to think outside that we hadn't tried before. And until they visually saw that, they didn't realize how they kept on just doing the same things, just with a different flavor, as opposed to being bold and trying something different. And I think so within this academy, it's also Sage has evolved on some of their values, and one of our key values is about being bold and being human. So it really plays into that space of innovation and some of the skills that we're supporting colleagues on, in that they are on a day-to-day basis looking at what they could do differently. How can they be bold? How can they ensure that they're empathizing and creating the right solutions for their colleagues in a human-centric way?
And did you find were there some, let's call them innovation learnings as opposed to flops?
100%.
Yeah. What did you learn from this process where things didn't go right all the time?
I think the biggest learning is the communications. So once again, in being transparent, it's having those constant retros, and reflecting on what's working, what's not working, and being transparent and being able to confront each other and like, this isn't working, this is working, and what do we need to do differently in order to pivot in that situation?
Yeah. And so now looking forward to where the Innovation Academy is going next, I don't know a chief innovation officer that doesn't have an AI strategy on their desk. What are your thoughts about that and how you're incorporating AI into the work that you're doing?
So I think it's such an important phase for all of us, and we started opening conversations with colleagues around AI about a year and a half ago. At Sage, we've had a AI specific team going for the last 7 years. So it's been a conversation in the business. I think AI has proliferated quite quickly since the generative AI phase. But for the last year and a half, we've been running AI skills session, well, AI snack sessions, just
Snack sessions. What's
keeping
a snack session?
yes. So it's a an hour-long session discussing different topics around artificial intelligence. So with some of our developers in the business, sharing some of their learnings, and different functions sharing what they're doing in the AI space, just to create more of those conversations and constantly looking at what are people needing to know. We have, I think, in every business right now, we're seeing that there's different cohorts of colleagues, those that fear AI and think it's going to take their job, and those that are leaning in and experimenting, and those that are confident. And for us, majority of the colleagues are in that curious stage and wanting to find out more and wanting to learn. And it's actually an investment in that phase, because as much as you're not saving money, saving time straight away, because you're learning and you're trying and you're experimenting. And it's about how you can learn and share some of those learnings around the experimentation, like we shared about the innovation mindset. So we're doing a number of different things to look at how we can support colleagues in their development, but focusing on that piece around all colleagues to start with, making sure everyone has that understanding of what it is for them and how they can use it. But on the innovation side also is how can it help you innovate in being able to problem solve, helping you create those problem statements by understanding different personalities and creating those different prompts that you can then start looking at, okay, what can we do in this situation, and almost using it as your coach and helping you validate which opportunities are going to go forward and which ones aren't. Obviously, using a bit of human discretion within that. But that's really a key focus area for us now, and ensuring that all colleagues understand how to use it and how they can then best use it in their innovations as well.
Well, I'm going to now ask you my three hot seat questions that I ask all innovation leaders who come on the show. So, what do you believe is the greatest innovation of all time?
Greatest innovation of all time, I think for me, is still the cell phone right now.
It's still software.
No, still the cell phone.
Oh, the cell
The
phone.
phone.
Or is it the mobile phone or is it the smartphone?
Smartphone.
Yeah, because God knows we had some car phones that could have really that were certainly mobile, but less than adequate for the needs we have today. Fantastic. If you had the opportunity to join any innovation team in human history, which team would you have liked to have been on?
At the moment, it is more South Africa based. There's a team called Checkers 60, and it's a Cape Town based company that have turned around a retail store that was more for your lower class income. But they also use COVID as an opportunity, where they were the first people to boldly start delivering your groceries. But their differentiator was they'll do it within 60 minutes. And
Wow.
they've really just taken this innovation to the next level and continue to innovate in so many clever, dynamic ways, that I'm loving the story that's rolling out with them right now.
And so they're able to get groceries across Cape Town in 60 minutes?
Across whatever town you're in, because they've used the retail stores and they've been able to create employment with gents driving, or males and females being able to drive around on motorbikes. So your limit is you have 30 items that you can purchase at a time. They've now started creating subscriptions. With it being a South African retail, a lot of South Africans have immigrated all over the world. So they ran a campaign where they had put an advert in one of the local papers in the UK saying, missing your family at home, send them a treat. And within 60 minutes, they had the right ingredients or whatever gift they wanted to get given, delivered to their family, and made it easy for them to do so. So within 60 minutes, you have your groceries, which is a very convenient thing.
Because when you need your biltong, you need your biltong. And
Definitely.
American beef jerky is not going to cut it. I get it.
No,
So my last question is, if you could, what's something that really annoys you or that you wish had been innovated that is not yet there? So something that you would really love, or something that really drives you insane that you wish somebody would just grab by the lapels and make better.
I think a topical one for all of us at the moment is the voting system.
Oh,
I don't
yes.
know about you in the States, but I know I've got colleagues in Spain, France, and the UK, and then myself in South Africa, and we're all moaning about the dynamics around the voting, and either standing in queues or incorrect voting being done.
Yes.
be streamlined.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. I'm currently reading a book by a guy named A.J. Jacobs here in the US. He wrote The Year of Living Biblically, in which he sought to live all the laws of the Bible in 1 year, not break
Mhm.
any of the laws of the Bible. So eating, dressing, interacting, whatever. He's written a new book called The Year of Living Constitutionally. What would it be like to live as though you were one of America's founding fathers in 1776? With the same restrictions and so forth of the originalist mindset of the Constitution. And he
Yeah.
talks about going to the voting booth, and he dressed as a patriot from the day in a three-cornered hat and the typical colonial garb, walked into his voting place and just yelled out his vote for governor and for senator out loud, because in 1776, after with the first election thereafter, you
Yes.
vocalized your vote. You didn't do it in secret ballot because you didn't want there to be any semblance of corruption. You had to stand by your vote, proclaim it loud and proud, and somebody would write it down. It was also very interesting to note that George Washington supplied something like 13 casks of rum, 48 casks of rum punch, and a variety of tobacco offerings to make everyone very happy to vote back in the day. And women would bake election cakes in
Oh,
celebration of this great day of voting. So it was a very festive environment for the very narrow group of people who could vote, who were
yep.
eligible to vote. But it was a great day of drinking, merriment, and excitement. So maybe we'll add that on as a retro innovation of what election process looks like. We'll scream it out loud, we'll get really drunk, we'll bake fantastic cakes, and it will be a party day as opposed to what feels like, I don't know, punishment day to go out and vote most days.
Yeah. Create a celebration
Yeah. Well, Bronwyn,
and
thank
just
you.
make sure we bring the equality into it.
Yes. Hopefully quality candidates. Like that would be
Yeah.
fantastic too. We would appreciate that very much. I hope everyone's listening. So, Bronwyn, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you to learn more about the Innovation Academy or SAGE or all the great work that you're doing?
Thanks. So you can contact me on LinkedIn, Bron.Dorrofield, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Also, just love to hear other people's experiences, what they're doing to drive the innovation culture within their business. So
Fantastic.
feel free to reach out.
Bronwyn Dorrofield, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thanks, Susan. Bye.
Bye bye.